the January 18th meeting of the Oklahoma City Water Utilities Trust to be in order, and the first item of business is the approval of the minutes from the January 4th meeting.
Move approval.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to approve the minutes of the meeting. Are there comments or questions? Voting, please. Minutes are approved. Next item is the consent docket.
I would move the consent docket subject to individual consideration.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to approve the consent docket subject to individual consideration. Are there items to be discussed separately?
Mr. Chairman, I have a couple of minor questions, I think. On project 3B4, this is a little bit bigger than a minor consideration. That's some work along the Highway 74, Portland Avenue, extension of the Hefner Parkway. That is a very heavily trafficked piece of road. And it's, I would hope that we could accomplish this project with the minimum disruption of traffic up there, and in coordination with the public works projects in that area to improve the streets so that we can have some satisfactory detours in mind before we start out there and not have to make it up as we go along. Do you have any idea when that work is going to be done?
I do not have the detailed schedule. I think Mr. Samandi and Mr. Hare.
Just, I don't know the details, just approximately when it would. So I think there's a lot of projects Public Works is working on in that area to improve the streets, arterial roads, and on the section line roads.
This is the on Portland.
Yes. If I could respond to that. My name is Sam Samandi, and we don't know the exact date for the ODOT to do their project, but we will do everything we can to minimize the disruptions to the traffic. Most of the stuff that's going across Portland Avenue will be bored, so there won't be any kind of a dig up and disruption of the traffic.
So essentially, the two lanes will be open all the time?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That's encouraging. It's not enough, but it's encouraging. And the other question I have on 3E.1, this is a policy A1 project, and it lists in there that we did a final inspection and accepted the project. During the course of construction, do we inspect it routinely to make sure that what's underground is done properly?
Yes, sir, we do.
Okay. That's
yes.
the only.
It gets the same inspection that all of our other projects get.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any further questions on the consent docket? Hearing none, voting, please. Consent docket is approved. Next item is the concurrence docket, 4 items.
Mr. Chairman, I need to ask you to defer, please, item 4D, the concurrence with the Economic Development Trust. That I understand this is an error on our part that the Economic Development Trust has not yet acted on this item. If we may defer.
Would next meeting be fine? Be satisfied? Okay.
Thank you.
Do you have a motion on the concurrence docket?
Move the concurrence docket, subject to individual considerations.
Second.
Are there items to be considered? Would you include in your motion the deferral
Deferral of item D. Yes, sir. For 2 weeks till the 1st of February.
Are there other items to be discussed separately, A, B, or C? Hearing none, voting, please. Concurrence docket is approved with the 1 item deferred. Next item, item 5, the acceptance of temporary and permanent easements.
Move we accept the easements.
Second.
Motion and a second to accept the easements contained in item 5. Are there questions, comments? All those in favor say aye.
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 Actually, you don't have to say aye. I have a switch here for that. I'm sorry.
Whatever you ask us to do, Mr. White, we're very compliant.
Yeah, I know. I'm amazed. I'm amazed.
Your leadership, Mr. Chairman.
The leader, here I am. What can I say? Next item is item 6. It's a series of reports.
Move we receive the reports.
Are we going to get presentations? I'll second that. Are there some presentations?
We are. The staff would like to make a couple of points for the audience. Mr. Samandi and Mr. Hare will be with us to make a presentation on item C, if that's acceptable to the trust. I wanted to draw your attention to the Lake Stanley Draper boat dock improvements, in which we're reworking that to produce 114 stalls for about $1.3 million. It's still, we believe we'll be able to meet the schedule for refilling the lake. And then, if I may, ask Mr. Samandi to tell you about the beginning of, or the proposal to begin our Southeast Oklahoma well water supply system.
Hi, my name is Sam Samandi. I'm the Utilities Engineering Manager. I'm here today to provide a report on the approach we're taking on the Southeast Oklahoma raw water supply for the city of Oklahoma City. A little bit of background and history. Currently, we have two pipelines that brings in water from the southeastern part of Oklahoma to Oklahoma City. The first portion of it was completed in 1964 and is commonly referred to as the Atoka Pipeline. It's about 100 miles made out of concrete pipe, and it has about 6 pump stations along the way. And another portion of the southeastern raw water supply is the McGee Creek Pipeline. It's about 17 miles, and it has 1 pump station and became operational in 1986. A little bit more background information in terms of studies and analysis that's been done in the past. In 2003, the utilities concluded a water master plan that looked at the needs of the city of Oklahoma City all the way to year 2051. And in that report, it recommended building a second Atoka pipeline and have it completed by year 2021. It also provided additional needs, described additional needs for water supply to be completed between 2030 and 2036. More recently, we have concluded another study in 2009. We called it Regional Raw Water Study for the Central Oklahoma, where Oklahoma City and a lot of other communities around us conducted this study. And it looked at the needs of all of the Central Oklahoma up to year 2060. And it also recommended the building of the second Atoka pipeline by 2021, and additional structures that needs to be built by between 2021 and 2030. This chart essentially shows those two studies next to one another. The only thing, they both recommended the same solutions for the city of Oklahoma City. The only difference is that for the needs of Central Oklahoma, out of the other study recommended a larger amount of water that needs to be delivered to Central Oklahoma, and the components will be larger. For instance, pipe would be bigger, and should be done a little bit earlier. And in the same study, they suggested 3 viable take points to bring in the other portion of southeastern raw water supply into the fold. That is namely bringing water from Sardis Lake to Oklahoma City. One of these options was directly bringing water from the lake itself, Lake Sardis, and the other 2 options were along the Kiamichi River at Noyes Crossing and Highway 3 intersection. Now, as we all know, the second Atoka pipeline is really considered as a part of the whole southeastern raw water supply system, raw water delivery system, that is. And in order to build it, it really requires us to look at this very closely and provide standardization of equipment and material so that when we're done with the whole system, it all can work really good. In order to do that, we need to study the whole system all at one time. So what we're proposing to do is to start with a hydraulic analysis of the system, including all the elements that goes into the southeastern raw water supply. Now, this will allow us to make sure that we haven't left anything out when we're designing this Atoka portion of the Oklahoma City, the second Atoka pipeline. And the system will work fine after all the pieces are put together. So we're recommending to the trust to proceed with retaining a system engineer that will start its work by doing the hydraulic analysis and come up with a conceptual plan for the whole system. Once that's done, he will provide us design standards for the Atoka portion of the pipeline, recommendations for standardization of equipment and materials to be included in there. And also importantly, develop construction sequencing and a schedule for this job. there's a lot of elements that will go with this job. And also provide us the logical breakdown of this job into smaller units. Once that's done, ARCWED will retain engineers, which we call them design engineers, to design these smaller segments. And they will do the final design services and the direction of the system engineer and oversight by ARCWED. They'll provide bidding services, construction administration, inspections, and providing us as-built records. And this slide right here shows the organizational structure for us to manage this whole project. Under the auspice of the general manager, the engineering manager would look at all of the project, will oversee the whole project with the help of the project coordinator for this job. System engineer will respond to the project coordinator's requirements, and then the chart will show is showing that we will retain the design engineers to do all of those pieces together. This generally is a very simplified version of hopefully a very nice project to be starting for the city of Oklahoma City. I'll be more than happy to answer any questions you might have.
Questions?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Sam, is the system engineer, would he be an employee of the city, or are you going to use a consulting engineer?
It'll be a consulting engineer retained by ARCWED. Yeah.
Because it seems like it'd be more work than one person could do in any kind of reason.
It's a great deal of work to actually come up with the conceptual plan, making sure everything is taken care of and thought of before we actually implement pieces of it.
Do we have any idea what our timeline is?
I expect
I saw timelines in here, but are there other timelines that aren't listed?
No, those are the major timelines that there are in here, but we expect to be in construction somewhere around 2015 or 2016. So this work, the system engineers' work, we hope to be completed within about a year. And then after that, we retain the design engineers to design all the pieces and find out what's the best time to actually bid those things, because there's a lot of material with this job that needs to be purchased or arranged. There's 100 miles of pipeline. That's a lot of stuff that needs to be taken care of and thought of beforehand.
You expect to be under construction with the dual pipeline, the second line,
Yes.
by 2015?
Yes. All of the study is really geared to identifying we don't leave anything out. So when our second pipeline is in, we have all the provisions for itself and the future connections that we might have.
Is the primary need for the system engineer to determine what the best take point is from the Sardis water? Is that more what it's about?
This is also part of their job as well, to establish that for sure, that what our options are in terms of bringing water from Sardis. Do we want to have, for instance, one pipeline? Do we want to have second pipeline? Or two pipelines at two different points? Those kinds of things we want to be considered.
All those ultimately bring water to Lake Atoka, which would ultimately be then pumped up in
That is
Oklahoma City
correct.
through the existing right-of-way and maybe in a second line.
That is correct.
So that it's really a two-stage thing, I guess, maybe.
Yes.
The overall system, but the big thing is where because we already know we're going to build the line from Atoka.
The second
We have the
pipeline?
right-of-way,
Yes,
and
exactly.
we're already ready to do that.
Yes.
It's to determine, and I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, I'm just thinking
No.
out loud. That is, the key is to try to determine what the best take point is for the Sardis water, whether it's along the Comiskey or directly from Lake Sardis.
That is correct. That's one of the elements of it. The regional raw water study really didn't recommend which one of these options is the best to take. But since the study is done, there's a lot of different ideas might be there in terms of bringing the water. So this piece will establish essentially that. What is the best alignment, for instance, for bringing the water from Sardis to Oklahoma City? All of that stuff is not settled. There's a lot of stuff that we need to know in advance so that we can design the system correctly.
Other questions, comments? We have a motion and a second to receive the report. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there other comments? Voting, please. Reports are received. On the regular portion of the docket, the items that are to be considered individually. The first one is ratification of the trust payments.
Move the payments be ratified.
Second.
Motion and a second to ratify the payments. Is there discussion? Voting, please. 7A is approved. 7B, request for qualifications for services.
For scale and corrosion, I want to explain, scale and corrosion chemicals are those that help us control red water in the drinking water system. We are spending enough money on this, we want to look at trials once again to make certain that we're using the most cost-effective chemical that produces the best result for our customers. The chemical that we're using does work, again, looking for most cost-effective option.
Any further comments? Voting, please. Next item is the resolution, item 7C, a resolution declaring certain handheld meter reading equipment obsolete and surplus.
Move we adopt the resolution.
Second.
Motion has second to approve item 7C. Is there discussion?
Just a question, what are we using to replace the system?
Very similar handheld devices that are, the old ones are, I don't remember that it says about 10 years old and not working well with the current.
So this is just an obsolescence
Yes.
issue? Thank you.
Further discussion? Voting, please. Item 7C is approved. Item 7D is the acceptance of a quitclaim deed from the Oklahoma City Development Trust.
Move the item.
Second.
Motion and a second on item 7D. Comments?
This was the item that was at council this morning when the trust was being dissolved. And so this is some residual property out by the Wilshire,
Near the Witcher Pump
Witcher
Station.
Pump Station.
And it may have value to us as we expand that pump station.
Further comments? Voting, please. Item 7D is approved. Item 7E is the approval water system permit between the City of Yukon and the City of Oklahoma City and the Water Trust.
Move the item.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the Yukon water sales contract, relocation agreement, etc. Comments? Voting, please. Contract is approved. Item 7F is approval of a permit for the management and operations for programs and facilities of the Lake Overhoser Soccer Complex.
Move the item.
Second. Is this a renewal?
This is not a renewal.
It's a new operator?
But this operator does manage other properties for us and has a proven track record with us.
Motion and a second to approve the management permit. Further comments? Voting, please. 7F is approved. Next item is item 7G, resolution authorizing the general manager to solicit a professional consulting engineering services for a system engineer,
This is the project we just talked about.
as we discussed previously.
Move the item.
Well, I'll second that. The consultants have been waiting for this for a while now, so.
Couple of years.
Have a motion and a second to approve item 7G. Voting, please. 7G is approved. Item 7H is the approval of the amended and restated service contract between the Water Trust, the city, and Veola.
Mr. Chairman, due to the size and scope of this project and due to the fact that we only have 3 trustees here today, I would recommend that we defer this item 2 weeks until February 1st until we can have more trustees here to vote on this issue.
Comment? Hearing none, all those in favor, do you have a second? All those in favor, vote. Item 7H is deferred to February 1st. Item 7I is a request for qualifications.
Mr. Chairman, I'd ask that we strike this item.
Have a motion and a second to strike item 7I. Item stricken. Last on the agenda is new business. Actually, really wasn't last, followed by comments from trustees, staff, or citizens.
Mr. Chairman, at your next meeting, we'll be visiting with you, I believe at your next meeting, or the second meeting in February, about the final results of your bond sale held last week, and the controlled burn that we held at Lake Stanley Draper, what we've learned and what we'll be doing differently in the future.
I was very, very personally pleased to see the burn go forward. Not quite as excited as Councilman Walters was to go play fireman, but I was very excited. I was very excited about it today, and I do have some questions about it. But I'm looking forward to the debriefing and how quickly we can pick another area to do it, because you can just see that it's going to make a difference.
Councilman, I drove out there last week, and I was struck by two things. One was the size of the burn. It just seemed to go on forever and ever, and I don't remember how many acres it was exactly, but it was...
Between 500 and 600, the plan was...
It was a substantial area. And then, of course, the other thing that was striking is how far down the lake is. I hadn't been out there for a while, and I hadn't seen it down at
You don't remember our comment on that?
I do remember you commenting on that. Yeah, I do remember that, but I hadn't personally seen it at this present level, so that was pretty amazing.
It is amazing. It's my understanding that it's never been this low since it filled the first time, and it's pretty dramatic when you see it. Any other comments? Hearing none, we're adjourned.